Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of the Mindful in Minutes podcast. I'm Kelly, and today we are continuing on with our friendship series. So, where I have my dear friends come on and talk about what they love to do. I very much think of my friends as like the Avengers of like the woo-woo and the spiritual realm. And I wanted to do a quick intro before we hop into our conversation with Jina Seer, who is a long friend of mine and a past life regression specialist. Jina has a potty mouth, and I told her that I don't usually swear on Mindful in Minutes. I do in real life sometimes, but Jina just couldn't help her little potty mouth. And it's one of the many things that I love about her. So you will notice that there is an E. I'm going to have to figure out after recording this. I don't even know how to get the E next to little episodes because for 7 years, I've never cursed once on this podcast, which I kind of wear as a badge of honor at this point. But Jina and her little potty mouth, she does swear, so do not listen to this one with your kids if you want them to pick up some new language. And I also will say, we get weird. We talk about the way out there, past lives, a little bit of aliens, entities, elementals. Jina is definitely one of my weirdest friends, and I mean that in such a loving way. I just have so much fun talking to her about the wild, the weird, the out there, questioning the meaning of a life, all of those things. I get to do that with Jina. And so I'm really excited for you guys to listen to all of this. But please, I just wanted to let you know that I know a lot of you like to listen with your kids, so they may pick up some new language. And we're getting weird in this episode, and I love it so much. So let's listen with an open mind. And I'm really excited to share my beautiful friend Jina with all of you. Also, we mention a lot in this episode, a lot of different things, different podcast episodes, things like that. I'm going to try to remember as much as I can to link all the things in the show notes. So, you ready? Ready for this wild ride? I am. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of the Mindful in Minutes podcast. Today, we are continuing the friendship series, which, even though this is only the second in the series, it's become like my favorite thing. And I don't know, maybe we need to come up with like a better name for this other than the friendship series, but so far that's what has stuck. But today we are going to be talking with one of truly the coolest women that I know, and that is Jina Seer. She's a past life guide. She is the host of the Past Lives and the Divine podcast. She is a first class flight queen. She is a hilarious person, an absolute legend, both in my heart and also in this world. And Jina helps people connect with and experience past lives, the space between lives, angels, higher selves, spirit guides, like you name it. Jina has a tool in her toolbox to help you access it. And so I wanted to have her on right away when I was figuring out who I wanted to have on this series. I was like, well, I need to get Jina on the horn so that we can talk about some past lives, some weird stuff, some woo-woo stuff. And you all have met Jina before. She has done, fun fact, Jina, you did a practice for us. And that is like a couple years ago. And that is still one of the top episodes. People love it. The people
I
love you,
love
Jina.
that. That is so cool.
And so here we are to help me co-facilitate the Past Lives 101 episode of Mindful in Minutes. So welcome, Jina.
I am so happy I'm your friend, and I'm so happy to be here.
Jina, I am just thrilled that you are here. And I also, when I started doing this series, I was like so excited. I want to do all the conversations because mostly I just want an excuse to schedule out time to talk to all of my friends, including you. And what people don't know is we did just spend almost an hour getting caught up because we had so much to catch up on. But I am so excited because, Jina, do you remember how we first met?
Yes, I believe I was living in just outside of Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I think I was sitting at my dining room table and I read an email from you. And the email, I didn't really understand, like I had to read it 3 times because I was like, wait a minute. And the email said something to the effect of like, I really wish you were in Minneapolis because I'd do a session with you. And I was like, wait, is she saying she wishes she was in Minneapolis? Or I'm like, bitch, oh.
I'm going to leave that in just for context, everyone. This will be the first episode of Mindful Minutes that has little E for explicit language, courtesy of Gina.
And we literally just talked for 5 minutes about how Kelly wanted us to watch our language. I was like, yo, I'll clean it up for this podcast, no problem. Okay, so, but I was sitting at the table being like, I don't really understand this. And then so I just responded and said, are you in Minneapolis? Because I'm in Minneapolis too. Let's get together and do a session. And then you came over, and it was just like that. To me, that's like a past life connection where it's like there's no reason why, but for some reason, when I'm in someone's presence or even just have a communication with them, it feels like, oh, like a well-worn path. Even if consciously in this lifetime I've never walked on that path, that's how it felt with you. Like it felt very past life. It felt like, oh yeah, this is someone who's this is like the real deal. This is a good person.
Um, that's so funny that you got that email and you're like, is this woman okay? Like, what is going on in her brain? Because so my version of the story, it's very close to yours, but I basically was just, I love to dabble. I will get, it's probably, I know it's part of my like ADHD. I'll get these like hyper fixations, but I'm also, I just like love learning. And I remember really vividly, I was like sitting in someone's house. I was like babysitting and the baby was napping. And for some reason, I'd been thinking a lot about like past lives. I don't even know why. And so I went into Apple Podcasts and I just typed like past lives. It's also part of the reason why I wanted to get you on this episode because I feel like there isn't a lot of like past lives 101 info. Like that's what I was looking for. So I typed in past lives or past life information or past life session, something like that. And the first thing that came up was one of your episodes. And I want to say it was something called like the anatomy of a past life session or something like that. And I listened to it and I was like, oh my gosh. And it just, I love how you describe it as like this worn path or like this path I've walked before. And there's something about you that I was like, okay, this lady is awesome. And I have been known to send emails, although I will say a lot of them go unanswered. I do try to make a lot of podcast friends and it's not always reciprocal. They don't always get back to me, but there was something about the way that you explained it. It felt so tangible. It felt so like down to earth, like the humor, the swearing, all of that. Like it just was so casual in a great way that I felt really comfortable. And I had no idea where you lived. And it turns out that we truly lived. I think the drive from my apartment to your house was like 14 minutes or something like that. Like we were pretty much like neighbors. And so I'd sent you that email because at the time you weren't doing any virtual sessions because this was like, pre-COVID. You're just doing in person in your house, which safety. Now that I'm a mom, I'm like, wow, Gina was really bold to like let people like to give people her actual home address and let them come over. Like you didn't know me. And you just like gave me the address to your house and I came over. But yeah, I just sent you this email being like, hey, I wish you were local. Like I wish I could do a session with you. And I had no idea you were actually like basically my neighbor. And I remember just feeling so at ease. And then when you responded and you're like, wait, I am in Minneapolis. And I was like, wait, I'm in Minneapolis. And then you're like, well, come on over. Let's do a past life session. I was like, done. And I don't know, there's something so comfortable and like so warm. And I just felt really comfortable doing this new thing with you that I had never really dabbled in, but I was so curious about. And I think that often when you do the kind of things that we do, whether it be more in like the metaphysical realm or, even meditation, things like that, that people have an idea of who someone who does this looks like.
Mhm.
And it's not always someone that's, just a regular old person, like a Midwestern mom of two who also, who has stressful mornings. We were talking about this, taking Mila to the doggy dermatologist, but then comes home and also just has such a love for meditation and like creating this podcast.
Yeah.
And so to find someone that felt like, I don't know, it just felt so right. And yeah,
Yeah.
I was curious though, if you remembered the time I emailed you out of the blue and asked
One,
and said, I wish you were my neighbor. And then it turns out you were my neighbor.
it's like I am. I think it was December of 2019. So that was 4.5 years ago, which really feels like 20 years ago, honestly.
So long ago. And do you remember, Gina, that you were one of the first people that found out that I was pregnant with pork chop? Because
Yes.
we had a business
Yeah.
meeting And I was like, I'm sorry, I'm not feeling very well.
For COVID. Yeah.
Yes, yes. It was like right before. I think that meeting that I had was like one of the last in-person meetings with anyone that I
Yeah.
had for years. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so, okay, well, good. I was hoping you'd remember our origin story. And so, okay, I do have some questions for you, Gina, because I have a lot of questions for you. But the first thing that I wanted to ask you is when you first started leading hypnosis, was it for past lives or did you start with hypnosis and then something inspired you to dive into past lives?
Well, I started with hypnosis and then was inspired to jump into past lives, but that was as a client. So when I did hypnosis, I started working with a hypnotist in 2013, and it was just like regular. I mean, what is regular hypnosis? It was hypnosis where we would explore like my childhood in this life and even womb in this life. And I don't know, there was just something in me that was really intrigued by the idea of reincarnation. I read Brian Weiss, Many Lives, Many Masters, which is such an elevator book and an expansive book for so many people. And I was right there being like, damn, I need to explore past lives. And so I found a marriage and family therapist in St. Paul who did past life regressions, Eric Christopher, who I highly recommend. And if you're in the area and want a session with him. And anyway, so I was his client for a couple years, probably like 2 or 3 years. And then I decided to get certified. And I learned clinical regular hypnosis, but I was there really to get the past life regression. So it was like I did a level 1, learned a little bit about past life regression and all about hypnosis, and then did a level 2 where it was really focused on past life regression. And I've done other trainings and other modalities since then, but that's kind of, as a hypnotist, past lives to me were always so intriguing. I'm also someone who just loves to get inside people's head. Like, even if they're doing shit that I'm like totally don't agree with it, I just want to know, like, why are you doing that? What's going on inside your brain? So the idea of like experiencing another lifetime with someone else that could help them learn and grow, but then also it's like so interesting for me. I'm just so curious about people and their thoughts. And I think that that's what makes me a good like questioner and guide in these scenes. But yeah, so like personally I was interested in it, and then when it was time to do it like professionally, when I made that leap, it was like that's what I'm going to do. And my spirit guides were always like, be known for past lives, do other shit, but be known for past lives. So my website, my social media, my podcast was all about past lives,
Wow.
even though I do
And
more.
do you remember what was going through your mind before your first past life session? Because that's something here that's on our list of questions. And when I asked you, like, what are the most common questions? And it's pretty much always like, what do you expect with a past life? Which we'll get into all of this. What do you expect with a past life? What happens? If someone's scared, what do you do? Like, what did you think before your first session?
Oh, yes. Okay, so at that time, I'm a twin, and my twin at the same time, we were kind of having the same interest in past life stuff. So she actually did a past life regression with Eric Christopher before I ever did. And hearing about her experience, and because I had been thinking about it and reading about it, I was just like chomping at the bit. But that's who I am. I don't have a lot of fear when I have a lot of curiosity. And so it, to me, it was like, yeah, I'm a little nervous, but and I actually talk about that very first session that I did in Past Lives as the client in episode 2 of Past Lives in the Divine. But I had like had this thing that I was like, I'm gonna go there and try to figure out this thing. And so I was just at that time really excited for it. I didn't have any fear, but I think that's also what kind of makes me good in that space, is that I just don't have a lot of fear. Like, even when I encounter a really nasty entity, I just don't have a lot of fear. Like, I have reverence. I'm going to use my tools and keep myself safe. I'm not going to be, disrespectful or anything like that, or put myself at risk in a way that I know. But I think that that's, yeah, just kind of what makes me good, is that I didn't have a lot of fear. But I do know that people have fear. And I've got ways around that for everybody as well.
Well, and I think circling back to what you just said about entities, since we found ourselves there in front of the entities, How common would you say an entity, because I imagine there's people listening, my beautiful Mindful Minutes listeners, and like you and I casually all the time, like we love some little like entity chat. I would say of all of my friends, Gina, if I have something that I feel like I probably couldn't say this out loud to everybody, you're the one that I'll tell it to. I'm like, I could tell Gina the weirdest experience I have ever had that no one else would believe, or it makes no sense, or a strange thought, or whatever it is. And I'm like, I'm going to tell Gina. Gina's going to have a thought about it, or she's going to have an experience. She can one up my weirdness and like double down on the weirdness. So,
Making that feel so weird.
and I think you do such a good job when someone does a session with you of like just keeping it really like safe and comforting and something that I've experienced. So if my regular Mindful Minutes listener is like, okay, you said entity, I'm like turning this episode off. Don't do that.
Don't, yeah.
No, no, no. And I think something that is really unique about hypnosis is that you really do have a lot of control. It's not like the kind of hypnosis where, it's like the party trick where you make people do like silly, goofy things at like a work function or whatever on like a booze cruise. And they're like, let's,
Post prom.
hypnotize. Yeah. Yeah. Things like that. It's really not like that. You do have so much more control. Like you don't like go anywhere necessarily that you don't want to go. Like you do have that autonomy over yourself. But common is it to come across an entity in one of these sessions? In case someone's listening and they're like, what's the likelihood of that happening?
So, okay. I was going to share my beliefs about entities, but I think that's a tangent. So, what I will say is that
Maybe that's for past lives 102. Maybe you'll have to come back and
no,
dig a little deeper. 102.
here's what I will say. We are way more powerful in that sphere than we will ever know. And when you understand your power, the fear goes away. And that's when you can actually stop anything, whether it's a shadow, an entity, another person, from influencing us in ways that we don't want to be influenced. I think that that's how we cherish this life. And so I think that to have fear is totally normal. Another thing about entities and fear and hypnosis is that when we're in hypnosis, when we're in that hypnotic state, we're in the realm of the subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind is really not a lot of science is understanding like what exactly is going on in that space. What are we actually accessing? Is it inside our body, outside our body? But our subconscious mind is there to keep us safe. And that is subconscious, it's unconscious, it's automatic. So if I put my hand on a hot burner, my subconscious mind employs reactions in this physical body to pull that hand off the burner before my conscious mind can even go, wow, that's hot. I should get my hand off. So know that your subconscious mind is doing that. Sometimes our subconscious mind is holding beliefs from childhood when we created a lot of our vision and beliefs of how the world works, which is why we want to go in there. But to know that we're not going to experience something we can't handle because our subconscious mind is keeping us safe all the time. And in hypnosis, we are in that subconscious space. And so we might see things that are uncomfortable. We might see things that we wish we weren't true, but we're not going to be shook or re-traumatized by those things. That's the way I do sessions. That's the way I was trained. That's the way I train hypnotists. So I don't know. I'm sure there's a hypnotist out there acting, nefarious or whatever, doing some shit. That's not what I'm talking about. So find someone who you trust, find someone who you feel comfortable with, find someone who you believe is going to lead you on a journey that if it is uncomfortable or not all sunshine and rainbows, you feel like this person can guide you and help you keep yourself safe. Like those things are all really, really important. But yeah, I do think ultimately there's that stop. Our subconscious mind is going to block things that are going to like re-harm us again in that space.
Yeah. And I would, to piggyback off of that, like I happen to be a Gina frequent flyer. I think at one point I was like one of her top clients.
Yeah.
One of the top. Yeah. I wear that as like a badge of honor because Gina and I started our relationship as a professional relationship and it has evolved into a friendship, which I'm so grateful for. But I've never experienced anything with you, even things that would be, quote, scary. It never feels scary in the moment. And it's very much because I've always felt like in control. I've felt comfortable. I've felt safe. And you really, from my experience, and I've probably done, I don't know, 6 or 7 different like past life regression sessions with you. More if you count like, kinship or guided practices, which
Uh,
Gina
yeah.
is sharing a guided practice with us for Sunday's episode. But I've never come across anything where it felt scary or too much or like, oh, I'm going somewhere and I don't know how to, get out of it. I never really experienced that. And I think what you said about the subconscious mind is so interesting, especially about how we can hold these beliefs in there that we don't even realize we're holding on to until we kind of get in there. And so much of what you said about finding someone that you feel comfortable with, that you trust. I mean, it's the same in the meditation space. Think of all the meditation teachers you know. It's such a spectrum. And I always tell people like there's a student for every teacher, a teacher for every student, but not every student and every teacher, they're not the right fit every time. So find one that feels good, comfortable, and safe for you and you just like their style. And I feel like your intuition really tells you like this feels like a good fit or it doesn't, and trust that.
Yes. Yeah. And I would say if you're confused, if you're like, yep, that all sounds good, and then you get to a place where you're confused, you feel like, man, I should trust this person, but I don't know if I do. One big red flag that we should all run from is when any of our teachers or anything like that refuse or won't empower us, remind us of our power, show us how to use our power, and have a good, healthy dose of humility. The age of Aquarius, age of Pisces is leaving. The idea of the guru who we all worship, no, this is a time where it's like we are going to be standing shoulder to shoulder, peer to peer. And if your guide isn't showing you how powerful you are, helping you see that and empowering you, red flag, red flag. That's what I think.
100%. Yes,
Yeah.
100%. I also think a teacher that never seems to have the ability to say, I don't know, or I'm
Oh,
not sure, or I'm not there yet. That to me is always a red flag because we all don't know things. To me, a teacher is someone who's walking the same path as a student, but they're maybe just a little bit farther ahead. So if we're
yeah.
walking this path together, I can shout back to the people behind me and say, hey, look out for this tree that's in the path, like turn left instead of right, and take my information to help them have an easier time on their path. But then there's going to be people that are farther along than me that then
Mhm.
I look to as a teacher and they can help relay information back to me for my path. And we're kind of just, helping to guide one another. But
Yes.
we all don't know things. We all hit a ceiling of what we know or we don't know. So someone who is unwilling or unable to say, I don't know, or I don't think I'm the best fit for you, or I'm still learning about that myself, that's always a big red flag to me.
Yes. Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
Right.
So listen to your gut and then also, yeah, like look at these things and how are these people operating? Even if everyone says they're great, like is it really something that resonates with you?
100%. And Gina, what would you say is the difference between hypnosis and meditation?
Hmm. Well, right away, what comes to mind is this idea of the brainwave states where we're kind of hanging out. And it's my understanding that deep meditation, whatever that means, can overlap with hypnosis. Um, I believe that what we really want is the end product, feeling expansive, feeling love, feeling like we're cherishing and honoring our life, feeling like we're using our gifts. So if you can get to that space of higher knowing, that space of like touching the divine within yourself, the divine in general, I think we can get there many different ways: meditation, hypnosis, drumming, ecstatic dance, breathing, all kinds of ways that we can get there. And so I think hypnosis and meditation, the methods can be very different. In hypnosis, a lot of times those methods are informed by your intention. Most people don't sit down into meditation and go, I'm going to access my spirit guides or a past life. You can. And even if you can't right now, you could train yourself to do it. I can do that. But that comes after like training my brain and understanding how it all works. And for me, that was through this deeper brainwave state of hypnosis. It was a way for me to kind of separate myself from my big emotions to have clarity. It was a way to just like deeply relax and get into that subconscious mind and really understand like the beliefs and stuff. So I think the idea is, in my mind, that meditation isn't as deep as hypnosis, but I do think that they can be very, very similar. It's just with hypnosis, the intention is we're going really deep right away, and we're going to go do some freaky things like see a past life, a spirit guide, go touch the divine, commune with Hecate, whatever you want to do. And I think that we can do that in meditation, and it can even look like meditation. But oftentimes just the intention is different, and the people coming in are maybe, to me, it seems like more willing to go farther, go deeper, get weirder if we're in that hypnotic space. But you can do it in both also, and we can train ourselves to do it in both. So I think there's a lot of overlap.
Yeah, I think you once described it to me. I think maybe it was when we were doing a retreat together, and this question came up because that retreat that we did together was so interesting because it was kind of like half people that came for
Yeah.
me that are familiar with my work, and then half that came for you that were familiar with your work. And we had these really interesting conversations between like the two different things that we did. And I feel like everyone kind of came together and like it was just such a great experience. But I think it was on that retreat that you said something along the lines of like they're just different vehicles like parked in like the
Yes.
spiritual parking lot in a way. And you can decide like which vehicle do I want to drive to get to where I'm going. And all of these different modalities are just different vehicles kind of in this, spiritual get to know yourself, turn inward parking lot. And I
Mhm.
often think of meditation as like a focusing of consciousness, like that single pointed concentration, where for me, hypnosis feels more like an opening, more of an open ended like experience of consciousness, if that makes sense. Like when
Yeah.
I'm meditating on a thing, it's like I'm taking my mind, I'm taking the light of my mind, turning it into a laser pointer to focus on a thing. But when I'm doing any kind of hypnosis, and it feels like this with yoga nidra sometimes too, I feel like that light is just being turned up. So it's just kind of like bright and illuminating things around me and kind of looking around like, oh, what's going on here? It doesn't have that like single pointed concentration focus. It just feels like a big opening of consciousness.
Yes. Oh my God, I love the way you put that. And even the word exploration, like in that opening, there's more that we explore. There's more, yeah, willingness to, because a lot of my cueing in a hypnotic session is just relax and observe what comes to mind. Just relax and observe what comes to mind. It's like following a thread. There's not a single-minded focus. The single-minded focus is what's in my brain right now. And when I think about that, what's the next thing that comes to my mind? And what's the next thing? And that is, yeah, so the way you put that, I love that description of like focus or kind of more open and exploratory.
Okay, amazing. Good. I'm glad that resonates with you because that's a question I get a lot too is what are the differences between these different modalities? And it's hard for me to really explain it without explaining like how it feels for me and what it feels like in my body to do these different types of things. So, question for you, Gina, for someone who's wondering like how does this all work? If someone was going to walk in, you don't live down the road anymore. We can't just show up at your house and walk in and say, "Hey, I'm here for a past life session." But what if this was their first session from like they've booked a session with you? What can you expect?
Yeah, so you mentioned, I'll just say this because I always say it, but if you want more details, episode 3 of Past Lives in the Divine is called Anatomy of a Past Life Regression. And that's a really, even though that episode is 5 years old, it's a really good snapshot of like what goes down, at least in my own sessions. So what's happening here is that they come into a session and we do a little bit of an intake. I just try to understand like what is your intention for being here? Where do you want to go? And when a client shares their intention for exploring a past life, sometimes I workshop that with them just because I've explored, thousands of lives with people. I kind of know like what's going to work, what's going to get the most in there, right? So if someone's like, I want to be here to figure out, some surface level issue, I'll be like, and what's underneath that. So anyways, I try to get the intention of like what are they truly here, what is their soul really looking for here. Then we move into the session, and it's 15 to 25 minutes depending on the client of hypnotic induction, which looks and feels a lot like a guided meditation, just a little bit different, like more intentional language around deepening and where we're going, the intention for the session, all that stuff. Then they get into the past life scenes or other lifetime scenes if you don't necessarily believe in past lifetimes or time working like that. So when we're in that space, it really is, we are dropped into that subconscious mind. So the idea is that we move out of that conscious awareness, comparing, planning mind into this deeper state, our subconscious mind. And through that, the idea is that everything that's ever happened to us is stored in our subconscious mind. So if you're freaky enough to believe in other lifetimes, that is stored in your subconscious mind as well. So not only other lifetimes, but the space between lives, life on other planets, if you believe in that. So that's why we access the subconscious mind. And then it's through that I ask questions, more information comes up from the subconscious about that lifetime. It populates a picture and a story. We move through different memories and scenes from that lifetime. Most people move through a death scene. Every once in a while, someone doesn't. The death scene, it sounds scary. I know that it can feel weird to hear how beautiful a death scene can be, but I'm telling you, it can be as beautiful as a birth scene. And then we come out on the other side and we reflect on that life. Like, what was good? What did you regret? What does that mean for your life today? And then we might ask some questions of their spirit guides if they want to do that. And then we come back down. But the idea is that we're sinking into the knowledge and the memories of that subconscious mind. And we have to be incredibly relaxed, like almost borderline on sleep. And in order to calm the mind, to be able to access these deeper memories, these more kind of like memories that are pushed way to the back.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Now, have you ever noticed that when you compare your life to other people, that you always feel worse? It's like comparison really is the thief of joy. And it's so easy to look at what other people are doing, either in everyday life or social media, and to feel like they have it all together, but you don't. And in reality, everyone has their stuff. And so that is one of the many reasons why I love therapy, because I think when I talk to my therapist about these things, about comparison, what others have versus what I do or don't have, that my therapist really helps me to kind of dial in on what is important and maybe what I want instead of focusing on what others have. And I just feel like it really gives me some clarity in life that I appreciate. Also, through therapy, I have learned that I need to set boundaries around how much time I spend on social media and to pay attention to the people that make me feel good and the people that make me feel not so good. So if you need some help with this, like I needed some help, I highly recommend BetterHelp. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. You just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with licensed therapists, and you can switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. So stop comparing and start focusing with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/minutes today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/minutes. I always know when I'm getting to that point, that really relaxed state. And I don't know if you've ever experienced this, or maybe you've heard other people say they experience this, but it feels like for me, I always know when I'm getting there because I can feel myself. This is going to sound really bizarre, but it happens every time. It's like I turn on my side, but I'm not. It's like I can almost feel like, I don't know, it's just like the whole world, it just kind of goes like tip. And it's as if I'm laying usually on my left side, even though I haven't moved. And there's something about just feeling that movement that isn't actually happening in my mind. As I'm saying this out loud, I'm like self-editing. I'm like, this makes no sense.
No,
But
say, don't edit.
that's how it, I don't believe me. You've listened to my podcast, Gina. You know I don't really edit. I just kind of let it flow. These conversations are the same. But it feels to me, and this happens like when I do yoga nidra, like anytime I do a practice where I get really, really, really deep, it's like I can just feel almost like it's like as if the room just like tilted on its side. And that's just what that experience is like for me. And I will say the death scene is not scary. I didn't find it to be scary. And there's a few things that stick out to me with the different sessions that we've had together that really stuck out to me. One was very much how the first 15 to 20 minutes, like you said, feels like kind of a long guided meditation. It felt really nice for me. And then we went to kind of this like hall of knowledge. And I've actually done a meditation. I think it might be a spiritual guidance meditation that was inspired by some of the work that we've done, where I think you called it like the hall of knowledge, right? Where you go, to me, it was the inspiration was like the Trinity College Library from Dublin, which is like so specific and niche. But I remember walking in there and like just feeling like this is like what the Hall of Knowledge would look like for me. And you go in there, you open a book, and the book has like some information for you. If I remember, I'll try to link that practice in the show notes. But I just remember that felt really good to get into that super, super relaxed state. And the past life that I recalled with our first session together was one where I was in Iceland. And this was such an interesting experience for me because, we all know I love Iceland, but it was such an interesting experience because not only was my first past life that I was recalling at the time, but I remember there was this one person who, and I've talked about them on this podcast. It was someone who was an employer of mine who my belief is that they were just a really unhealthy, that I was experiencing some workplace abuse with this person. And they were from a different state that I lived in. I hadn't really thought about them for a while. And this thing came up and we learned later it was called the shield maiden. Because one thing you will do after a past life regression session, you will go home and you will start Googling everything because you'll be like, what just happened? What was that? You're going to fact check yourself and you're probably going to find some really interesting things. And I was on like this boat and this like fight broke out on this boat. And I was just kind of like, I don't know, woman of power. And the person that killed me in this past life, I remember I said this thing that was so chilling and I will never forget. And I was like, oh, this is, so and so, insert this person's name that I'm not going to name them here. But I was like, oh, that's this person when I met them in real life or in this current life. Immediately when I met them, I knew this wasn't like a safe person. My gut told me like danger, run away, but my head said, this is a good thing for your career. This is a good thing for your employment. Like stick it out. But my gut said, danger, danger, run away. So I was exploring this in this past life. And I think you asked me the question of something like, do you know this person or have they shown up before? Is this like an archetype for you? Like, who is this person? And I said, oh, this is so-and-so. And basically what happened in this death scene is there's like this kerfuffle on the boat. And while everyone was distracted, they came up and they like stabbed me and threw me off the boat, which sounds so like grotesque. It really wasn't that scary. I was just kind of like watching like a movie and I was like, oh, okay, there I go, whatever. And then these whales came and like helped show me the light. It was really beautiful and healing. But I'll never forget. And you said, oh, I don't even remember what the question was. You asked me something about why did they do this or what does this mean? Something like that. And I go, oh, well, in my current life, they stabbed me in the back. But in this past life, no, what did I say? I said, this time they stabbed me in the front and threw me over. But in this current life, she didn't have the guts to do that. So she just stabbed me in the back. And there was something about that moment where it just clicked for me that not only my gut was like danger, this person isn't, but like I kind of got like stabbed by them in both lives, but there was such a different experience of them like looking me in the eye in a past life, like stabbed me in the front and like throwing me over the boat, as opposed to like the experience that I had in this life of this person. It felt like they were really kind of like slowly sucking the life out of me and eventually kind of like stabbed me in the back. And it was just so interesting. I don't know why that clicked for me in that moment. It was so chilling that I was like, oh, in the past life, I was stabbed in the front. And then in this current life, she stabbed me in the back. And maybe that means nothing to anyone else. And it doesn't have to mean anything to anyone else. I think that's a big piece of this is like, it was a profound moment for me and it connected the dots as to why I had such a big physiological response to this person was because I felt like there was some kind of soul history there and it only had to mean something to me and it helped me. And my question that I'm leading into of how do we know any of this is real? And I want to hear your answer, but my answer is we don't. And I don't think it really matters because there's been a handful of experiences I've had that have felt really good and healing and informative for me and my life and made my life better for it. And to me, that's the point, not necessarily proving this is right or this actually happened or walking away with that proof. Like for me, the proof is in the experience of my life of having more information, maybe understanding myself better. I had one session with you where and I always set the intention. Do you remember my first intention with you? It was to have a good time and to have a wild experience. You're like, what's your intention?
I don't
Like,
remember that.
state your intention. And I think I said something like, I'm just here for a good time. I'm just here to have an experience. And you're like in your, realm and you're like,
Okay,
oh,
shield maiden.
yeah, you're like, okay, guys, we're here for a good time. And I got
Yeah,
it.
right.
And
Yeah.
that's usually my intention of like whatever needs to come up, or I'm just here to learn more about myself. And I had one experience that felt really healing and informative around my relationship with my dad. And it just gave me context that I needed to understand and to have some healing around that. And to me, that's the point. Not is it real or not? It's like, how does it benefit me now?
To me, that is the point. When people get all, like you said, you're going to have an experience, go home and Google this stuff. And I think a lot of people do, and I love it when they do and they share those things with me. But to me, I've never Googled anything, and I've probably seen over 40 of my past lives. Like, it's not interesting to me to try to prove it. Like, it's so real in the sense of the aftermath and the benefits in this life today as Jina. I'm not getting all twisted about being an assassin in a previous life. I'm not getting all twisted about being a highly exalted ritual leader in a past life. We've been everything, we've done everything. And so to me, that's the realest part of like, what is the aftermath? So I can't speak to your experience with, the woman who stabbed you in the front in that life and in the back in this life. But for me personally, I've had someone in my life almost my whole life that I've noticed that they just tear me fucking down. They tear me down. Nothing's good enough. Like, even when they're being nice, it feels like a backhanded compliment. And I saw a past life where it was like, wow, I had a life with them where they were like this, but 20 times worse. And they were actually the reason I got killed. And so it's not like I'm holding that in my life being like, yeah, you're awful. No, what comes out of that is me being like, man, we've all played a role in everyone's life like that. We've all had this. And I think a lot of times when we are looking to heal, what we're trying to do is just get some fucking closure. Like, find some peace in that situation, and adding a context, a story to it can be so impactful. And it can also kind of expand us out away from the emotion of our experience with that person today. And we can kind of see the divine flow of things. Maybe we did that thing to them in that life. And I'm not saying that to like discount, like, if you've been abused in this life, that's because you abused them in that life. That's fucking bullshit. Oh my God. And I said like the worst swear word. I'm sorry. That's
Jina.
so bullshit. Like, oh, and then I followed it up with a swear word that other people think is a swear word. I don't think that is a swear word.
Remember, I like gentle parented you, Jina, and I said, we are going to work on I do this with Pork Chop too. I'm like, wow, I can see we're having a hard time right now. Let's work through it.
Yeah. And we both have that Aries energy in us. Okay. So,
I know,
but
I know.
what I'm saying is really, it's like the aftermath of it. Personally, my beliefs, like, I used to really believe they were my past lives. But in leading thousands of these journeys, having many transcendental experiences on my own, I think it's all happening at once. I think we're all one. So, like, yeah, I could experience anyone's life at any time, which to me is more magical than less magical. And honestly, if I move out of this body after my death and realize it's nothing and it's all nothing, then I'm glad that I chose the magical, fun point of view in this life. Because what would be even more impressive? Not that I can go into my subconscious mind and access a memory from 200 years ago, that my mind could make up a story that felt so real in my body that it affects my life and changes the trajectory of it. Like, that to me is almost more impressive. So even if it is all made up, it's like the aftermath is totally real. And that's what we should be focused on. And that's actually like what I focus on with clients, is like trying to get this information and how does it actually integrate into your life today? So you can take this information, good, bad, pleasant, uncomfortable, and like integrate it in your life so you feel better in your world today. You're more wise, you're more kind, you're more loving, you know your power, you share your power. That to me is like the realest thing about it.
And Jina, when you speak with passion, I get like tingles. When
I
you are
know.
so excited and so passionate, like this is the thing, like with this like friendship series, and I keep talking about how great my friends are. My friends are amazing, but like I just love how like passionate you are and like how much you love what you do. And I think that's what really resonated with me to be like, oh, I want to kind of dabble in this, in the weird and the woo-woo with Jina, because it's like you can tell when someone gets so excited about it. And I've never thought of it that way, that the thing that would really be wild is if your mind was completely making up this whole narrative about all this stuff that then relayed to something that was happening in your current life. And then you're trying to like integrate back into your everyday life with this information or more context. And sometimes people will ask me with yoga nidra in particular, they'll be like, oh, I had this experience, quote, is it normal? Or is it normal that? And sometimes with meditation too, is it normal that I felt like there was some kind of a loving presence with me? Or is it normal that I felt like I was floating? Is it normal that, sometimes people will think they've had, a past life or something pop up. And I always say there really is no normal. It's all just your own experience and your subconscious mind. It loves to speak in imagery and be abstract. And it only needs to mean something to you, and it only has to feel a certain way to you, and that's it.
Yeah, and make it mean something to you.
Mhm. One thing you said to me, there's a couple of things that you've said to me, Gina, that have stuck with me that I want to just touch on. One of them is I asked you once when I was joking about, someone who I lovingly referred to as my nemesis, but it's just someone in my life. We all have someone in our life. It doesn't matter if you're a meditation teacher, past life regression specialist, a dermatologist, whatever you do, everyone has someone in their life that is just kind of really tricky. It's just, putting it nicely. And so the tricky person in my life, being extra tricky. And I think I sent Gina a voice note being like, what happens after the fact when we're all, when we're gone and this tricky person has passed, I've passed? What do you think happens when we see each other like in the afterlife? And you said, I think we look at each other and we laugh, being like, whoa, what a wild ride. Can you believe the way we treated each other? And I don't know why that's always stuck with me, where it's like, you know what? Maybe we do get that clarity after the fact. And those people who are like really, and I'm not talking about the people like the abusers, like the harmful people. I'm talking about the people that are just like a pain in your butt, get on each other's nerves, all of that, is that then you get this clarity when we're kind of our best selves. We don't have the baggage of the life that we live. And we're like, whoa, look at what we did to each other. Look at the way we talked about each other. Look at what we did. And that has always stuck with me. That really shifted the way that I thought about tricky relationships. Again, not actual like unhealthy, toxic, like all of that, like just the tricky ones, the annoying ones, the pain
Yeah.
in the butt relationships.
And I want to insert here that like I not only believe that, but I've seen that. I've felt that in me upon a death. I have seen it in my clients and heard them. Like immediately, remorse takes a second. That's all God needs. Or universe or whatever word you want to talk about. Like
Wow.
it's huge. And sometimes just waking up from the dream that is life in the third dimension is enough for our soul to be like, whoa, I can't believe, oh, sorry what I said to you when I was in the density of the third dimension, essentially.
Oh no, not that third dimension getting the best of me again. Shoot.
It's epic.
Okay, so since we're going there, since we're going the third dimension, all of that. What Because I am still a Gemini. I love a little like gossip. I love a little, I don't want to be gossiped about, but if someone is gossiping, my ears do sometimes, pick up a little bit. I'm like, what's going on over there? What's the weirdest thing you have encountered during a session, either personally or with a client? Like the weirdest of the weird, what happened?
Well, I don't want to share what happened to me because I feel like people are going to get scared and you don't need to be scared. But
Okay,
what
yeah,
I
we don't have to scare people.
yeah, I don't want to
Like
do that.
fun weird.
But fun weird would be, well, to me, it's all fun, but I realize I'm a little darker than most. So, you know what it is? This would not be weird to me now. Um, but the very first time I had a client that encountered an ET in a session, we went to go talk to their spirit guides, and beings of light is what she called them, came in to talk to her. And this is episode the episode is called Beings of Light. I think it's like episode 91, I think, or 111, 91, I think. But that was really weird because I had never had a client who encountered an ET on a level where they couldn't talk. Like, and you can even hear it in the recording. It almost sounds like she's being like crushed by their energy. And so as the facilitator, I'm like, okay, she's struggling. WTF is going on? Who are you talking to? Right? Like, so I'm trying to deduce, like, are these benevolent beings? I don't have malevolent beings into my session, which is a whole other conversation. We do have the right to set up boundaries like that. So I knew that it wasn't like a malevolent thing that was trying to mess with it. But sometimes I might not know, right? And that can cause fear. So it was just like trying to figure out like, okay, can you step back and away from her so your energy isn't as intense? Can you still share messages, but allow her to talk and feel normal? And so we kind of worked it out where they stepped back. She could still get their messages. And then you can just like hear in her voice. And if you're empathic or psychic like me, you can just like feel it in your body of just like, ah, okay, now she can get their messages. And being visited by ETs is not weird, fortunately slash unfortunately for me anymore. But back then I was like, what in the world is going on? You know?
I love how you're editing yourself right now, Gina. I can see it in your eyes and in your face that you're like, I am going to respect this boundary of not shocking all Mindful in Minutes listeners. Um, I appreciate that, Gina. Okay, so let's circle back to the ETs here for a second. So
Okay.
are you able to then set up, you said you can set up boundaries. I've seen you do this, but you can set up boundaries, or the person who has experienced a past life can set up boundaries, or both? Like if something weird starts coming in and you or your client, you're like, I don't really want to go there. What do you do?
Yeah, just say it. So first, what I'll say, like on a human level, in the third dimension, in these bodies, we are, I mean, we're always sovereign beings, but even more so in these bodies because we're separate. So we can always put up a boundary. And a lot of people probably aren't going to like it, which is why you have to have a boundary in the first place, because you have people overstepping. So we can always do that. And we can do that with energies in the unseen realms, however you want to put that, ET, ghosts, whatever, all of it, elementals. So, oh shit, what was your question in that?
So what do you do in those moments? Something starts coming in and you're like, uh-oh, we don't want to go there. Or your client is like, I'm not ready to do that. What do you do?
Yeah, so this sticks out to me because this is such a good example. I talk about it a little bit in hypnotic arts training too, which is why it's right in the front of my mind. But I had a client who, in this session, there was, and I don't mean to be inflammatory to people, but like an entity in this session that was like this dark cloud. And in my intuitive mind, everything in a dream, everything in a past life regression is for us. So I think that if she's going to get the most out of the session, I think that she should go chit chat with that entity. Like, I'm here for you. Let's do it. Right. And that's part of my work is like, I create the container that's safe for us to do this. So if the client is open and willing, we will experience that. But this one time, this one client was like, I don't want to do it. It's like, all right, cool. This is your session. All right, so we're going to move away from that. And we moved out of that scene and we just pretended like we didn't see it. And she was fine and she got stuff out of the session. She had another session with me, saw the entity again, was scared, but willing to work on it. So we moved out of that space and were able to work with that entity and figure out what it was and release it to the light and out of her life. And so even in a session, even when you're being guided, feel comfortable with that person where you can be like, this, I don't want to do this. Also, know that you're safe. We don't have to be free from fear to do this kind of work. But you just want to be able to feel safe, have someone guide you in that fear. But we can always set up protections. And I've got so many stories in my personal life where this shit actually works. But as a person, we have free will always, even in a hypnosis session.
Yes. And I've experienced that too, where you can, I mean, it really is as easy as just saying, okay, we're going to move away from this. And then you move away. It's not like you're going to get stuck there. You're not going to get trapped there. You're not going to be held there. It's kind of just like, all right, moving on. And then you move on and that's it. A few more things of questions. I have like 9 million questions for you, Gina, but out of respect of time, I want to ask all of them, but I want to talk about pets and past lives, because this is something that I feel like comes up a lot. We both have fur babies. I can share my experience where of Mila and me in a past life, which was it was so beautiful. You guys, I started like weeping in the middle of the session because to me it was so beautiful. And I think like Gina was like, I was almost in tears. And we were
I
doing, was it a life between live session or a past? I don't remember
Yeah,
which one it was, but
like
I was yeah. And so I was moving like, I don't even remember the rest of it, the death scene, whatever. That's so like, I don't know. I don't even remember what that was. and we were moving, and Gina said something like, is someone coming to take your soul and show you the way, or something like that. And I just remember that I was there, and it was kind of like I was floating like in the ether, kind of looking around like, oh, I'm just like this soul. What do I do now? And then Mila came, and Mila just came in, and it was so like, oh, I'm just getting like tingles talking about it. And it was so powerful in the moment, because Mila came, and I realized that she's basically, I don't even know how to describe it, but like my soul, like truly like a soul guide, where she was coming down being like, okay, this is where you go. Like, you're going to come to the light. We were reunited. It was really beautiful. And I had this message so clearly that Mila is always there for me. And like, she came down and she joined my life at a time where I was like the loneliest I'd ever been. And she came earthside to be with me, to be my friend in a really, really, really lonely time in my life, and to be there with me through it all. And now, as she's getting older, this makes even more sense to me. And like, I could, I'm getting emotional even talking about it, but like, she's getting older, she's 10 and a half. And I know that she came down to be with me, to keep me company, and to be my true soul guide for years, until, my children would come. And now I have my children with me. And so I've never been alone, thanks to her. And that she came right in that specific time. And it was so powerful to see her come and to just show my soul the way to go. And I know so deeply in my heart that, even if, I mean, everyone's time on earth is finite, but that Mila and I will always be together, that's something that's like a deeper. And I think a lot of us have had experience with our animals, some of our animals in particular, where we're like, oh, not only have I know, it feels like I've known you for forever, but like, our time together is not just finite. It's not just this amount of time that we have. Like, this is something deeper. Does this come up a lot in the work that you do?
I wish it would come up more, honestly. I think it's the grieving of pets is still like treated like they're just pets. I don't know, they're
Yeah.
family members to me. So
Yeah.
when someone's dies or whatever, like, or when mine die, like those are the closest relationships to me because, yeah, to me, I'm a sensitive, feeling person. So you get a being of pure light and love to share my home. I'm fucking attached. Oh, I'm
Yeah.
attached,
No,
like,
no, swear for that one. Yeah. You
and I think that it is an evolution to be able to feel that much for a being and to be able to feel their love in return and to honor that and to see them as a true being. I think that that's why when a human pours their intention and attention on an animal or a pet or a plant, it takes on a consciousness even more than it had before. And I think that's part of the magic of being a human. And I do believe that, I mean, I have a little guy, he's a little red wiener dog named Winnie. He has helped me in more ways than I can count. And one of the things I whispered into his ear as he was passing was like, please visit me in my dreams, like visit me in my dreams. At this point in the game, 13 years later, I'm like, the third dimension is the dream. He's in my dreams, like here, down here, he's in the real. But yeah, I do believe that like they can be up there guiding us. And whether you see them as a spirit guide or just like someone you loved who's now on the other side, I think we do a real disservice by being afraid of that realm and not engaging and recreating that relationship with people who have passed on. And people meaning our pets too, like our loved ones. And I have for sure, I've had one of my dogs right now, I know we've had past lives together. And we can communicate so clearly. Like she's never had training, and to me, training is like working on communication with my dogs. And we communicate so well. And that doesn't mean I mean, she is my favorite. I play favorites for sure, but I do love my other two to like crazy. It's just a different connection. I really do believe that. And something that I'll say too, because I've talked about this on my podcast and I've had people on my podcast talking about it. But when we have a dog like yours who, they've given us so much, and we know that just logistically time is finite in these earth suits. And while she's here, something that I've done with a dog that's passed away is like when they're old, they sleep a lot, or at least mine have always slept a lot. And I think that's like prep for them, kind of almost like making up their space on the other side. And then they slowly move over there. But like I would sit beside her while she was sleeping so hard and just try to feel her energy. And don't poo-poo it. Don't be like, I'm imagining it. It's not real. Da, da, da. Feel it. Like, don't touch them physically if you want, but like get used to feeling their energy when your eyes are closed and you can't touch them. And that to me, that has been so valuable in the connection after they pass away. And so if you have an old one, if you're like me, one of your toxic traits is grieving your dog long before they die. So like switching,
Same.
like switching that to be more productive and just like sit there and be with them. Let your grief push you to connect with them even more here in preparation for when they're not in the physical with us. Yeah, they're magic, man. And this earth needs that love. We need to feel more love. We need to feel more compassion. I know it sounds trite on a Monday morning, but it's real. Every time you kiss and hug Mila and she shifts your mood, that's a miracle. Like that's a miracle. You have changed your frequency. We all know, like when we're in the depths and the dumps, we are completely different people operating in completely different ways than when we are at our best, feeling love, wanting to cherish and experience this life. And a dog's love, a pet's love, a human's love can swap that. Like it can push us up there in a second. Connecting with our spirit guides can push us up there in a second. They can crack a joke that it's like makes us laugh, because the universe has a real sick sense of humor. If you're paying attention and willing to laugh, it's actually pretty funny. And all of that is to get the mood, the consciousness, the energy of every human. Like we have to hold a higher frequency. And again, it sounds trite on a Monday morning, whatever, but it's real. Like their benefit in our life is more than we can ever know.
Oh, I love that so much. Thank you for speaking on that. And I want to kind of close it out with two things. One thing we can spend a little more time out, and then, we can wrap it up with something. But I want to hear about your experience with friendships. And this is all like friendship series. Like, is there any prominent like female friendship in your life, or like a friendship that sticks out in your mind that you feel like you became a better person over, or just anything that you've learned about friendship? Like when I said, Gina, I want you on the friendship series. Like when you think about friendship and what it means to you, what comes up?
Oh, okay. So the way you're posing that question, so the first thing that kind of pops in my head is I just had, so I have a membership group called Kinship. We meet once a month or a couple times a month, do hypnosis stuff and also talk like witchy woo stuff. And I just held in Prescott where I live, I just had a weekend where some of the Kinship people who could / wanted to come, we like had a weekend together. And the two kind of like co-facilitators were Sarah Leverett, who I do the hypnotic arts training with, and then another friend, Erica. And she, like being with those two, being in that space just 2 weekends ago, to me, it's like that's the friendship stuff that's coming up. And in that, if I were to use it as an oracle picture, it's like I just don't know if it's right to be like, these are my childhood friends and I'm done. Like, I think that friendship is something that we should think of as almost like, the whole cliche, love is a verb. Like, I think friendship is the same way. Like, if you want to grow and learn, get some friends in that area. If you want to feel more supported, find supported friends, give support, And I think that friendship is something that we just aren't intentional enough about, honestly. And if we get intentional about it, they can be so nourishing, so inspiring, and just so pleasure filled. And so that's the thing that, as a 43-year-old woman who went through a great friend cleanse in my 30s, I do believe that like being intentional about the people that we hold close, not just family, but our friends too, can really elevate us. And not like get some friends that you can use who are going to like make your life better, but yes, and then do that for them. Like that is, I love like a reciprocated relationship with someone who's also trying to be a good friend. Like to me, that's really cool too. So that's what I see like in this kinship group and the two women that I led it with. It's just a lot of people who inspire me for different reasons, and just like give me a lot of support and really reciprocate the support that I give them too, which is really cool. So I don't know what it is in there, but yeah, keep going.
No.
Friendship is a verb. Find the ones that work for you. Finding friends as an adult is hard, and so what? Do it anyway.
And yes, to all of that. And I always say that a little friendship test that I have is like, how do I feel after I'm done spending time with them? Do I feel like it's a net positive? Do I feel like it's a net negative? Is it a net neutral? And I'll let some net neutral people kind of, stay, but it's really only kind of the net positive. Like if I go in and on a scale of 1 to 10, if I show up at a 2, will I feel better? If I show up at a 10, will I feel like a 12? Like a
Yeah.
true good friend, not in the, I'm using you in any way or want you to elevate. Like you just feel better after spending time with them. And one thing that truly comes to mind is when we did our retreat out in Vancouver and you and me and Daniela, we were glamping. I was like, I don't know, almost into my 3rd trimester of pregnancy. And I'm not like a camper or a glamper really. And we all shared a tent. And we had so much fun. Like we were like, haha, giggle, giggle, like all night long. And we just could not stop like laughing. We were talking about all of this stuff. Like there's no one I'd rather be in a tent with other than you and Daniela. And I think one of the biggest takeaways was just, I just felt so good to just share space with friends and to just like laugh about the stupidest stuff, or like I'm trying to do my recaps at night before the Wi-Fi gets like shut off and you guys are in your beds that are like 6 inches away from mine. And I'm like, Vancouver retreat day 3 recap. And I do it all in like one take. And I'm trying to rip through my voiceover. And you guys are just like silently laughing into your pillows as I'm doing this thing. Like, I don't, it just feels so good to share space with a friend for no reason other than just like to have a good time, laugh about like the dumb stuff, talk about the weird stuff, and you just feel better.
Yeah, and I will say that's one of the things that I really appreciate about you as a person, whether I'm co-leading or facilitating something with you or a friendship or a podcast interview, whatever. It's that you are so good at like keeping the vibe up. Now, don't get me wrong, I am a codependent, covert, used to be people pleaser. So I put way too much energy into reading the room and keeping the vibe up, and I'm working on that. But most people don't do a dang thing to get the vibe up in a room. They just sit there and wait. And that's fine. I've come to the conclusion that a lot of people don't mean anything by it. That's just like who they are, where they're at. But dang, do I appreciate someone who is just as much like willing to see the bright side, keep it light, have a good time. And I'm not saying bypass the hard shit. I'm saying I hit that hard shit when it's here. And when it's not, I'm having a good time. And I really appreciate that about you. And so I think that like also like how you want to feel. I think the way you said it was like, how do you feel after hanging out with these people? And is it worth it? No matter what that is it worth it to you? And maybe in the long term it is. And maybe you're like, maybe not. But that's what I love about Kelly Smith is that
Oh,
woman keep the vibe up.
well, thank you, Gina. I appreciate that. I feel really strongly that every interaction you have with someone is an opportunity again to make them feel worse, feel the same, or feel better. And I do my best to have every interaction at a bare minimum, net neutral. But I really want people to, after they interact with me, even if it's just like a little 1%, maybe feel a little bit better. Because how much of life is like having interactions and you don't feel better after them? So I
Right.
try to be intentional. So I really appreciate that. And there's so many things that I appreciate about you, Gina, especially coming here, talking about the weird with me. Like I said, you're the friend that if I say, haha, my spirit guides, which we did talk about this, played this really funny joke on me. And to anyone else, I'd be like, what are you talking about? But I can send you a random out of the blue voice note saying, you're never going to believe what my spirit guides did to me. It was so funny. They were trolling me with the, whatever. And I can send it to you. And you're so passionate about what you do. You give such intentional, thoughtful responses. So I'm so grateful for you. And Jina, you need to tell everyone, where can they find you? What are you working on? Because I'm sure some people are listening to this being like, that was weird, I'll pass. And that's okay. Then we then we are not for you. But for the majority of you that I imagine are listening and they're like, I need more Jina into my life. I want to try a past life. Where can they find you? How do they do that? Tell us everything.
Yes. So the easiest is go to pastlives.com, and that's where you can find information about me, information about the podcast. As this gets released, I will have announced that I am closing my or I'm not going to be releasing any more new podcast episodes, which was a huge decision to come to for me, over a year in the making. But still, check out those episodes, like 187 episodes. I'm going to have, all of those hypnotic journeys, discussions, more weird stuff. And then through that, you can link to, like, get on my email list and stay up to date. I'm still doing hypnosis. I'm just taking the
Great.
podcast on the back burner.
Yes, and get on Gina's wait list because she lets you know. She'll say, hey, my books are open. You can book sessions with me. You can do them virtually, which is amazing. So if you want to experience that, you can with Jina. And she's going to lead our meditation on Sunday. She actually has a 30-minute mini past life regression session. So we will all get to experience that on Sunday. So Jina, thank you so much for being here, for sharing this space, answering all of my questions, and for being my friend.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for having me.
Okay, bye, Jina.
Bye.